Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I know y'all been waiting on this one for a minute. It's a lot of information, so get ready. And we're going to talk about Aleister Crowley today. He was very passionate about doing whatever he wanted to do. Like he just wanted, he literally was an occultist, ceremonial magic. He was a sex addict, drug addict. He was a novelist, a mountaineer, a painter. He studied tarot. He did everything. He wrote a ton of books. And a lot of the books I'm sure that you guys heard of if you do follow the witchy type deal. Anyway, my name is Brandy. What I do is I bring you cool stories like this about witches and witchcraft and all that fun stuff. And while I do it, I put some makeup on my face. So if that sounds awesome to you, please stick around. And let's go ahead and get this party started. So Aleister was born October 12th of 1875 in England, in the UK. And he was born into not a poor family. No, they were not poor, not even a little bit, no. His dad was a pastor, yeah. So you kind of get the feeling why Aleister kind of goes off the deep end a little bit, okay? But I am going to tell you guys about this religion that his dad was a preacher of, because I feel like it's important in the way that it shaped how Aleister thought for the rest of his life. So the name of this faith was the Plymouth Brethren. Yeah, it's hard for me to say that word. Brethren, okay? And no, it did not start in Plymouth. It actually started in Ireland, okay? And this kind of religion is a lot like Christianity, only it is a lot more confined, if you will. Basically, your life was the Bible. The Bible was word. You could not think for yourself. You could not have any joy or any fun in your life, none whatsoever. This religion came about in about 1830s, and they carried it all the way to the United States. And this is how the Crowleys end up where they end up. And so they have money. Obviously, the church is doing well, okay? But you would think that Aleister starting out would be like, yeah, no, I'm not down with this. But you know what? Aleister was devout. He was a devout person to this religion that his father was a preacher of, okay? But then tragedy strikes, like always. And poor Aleister's father passes away when he is 11 years old. So when his dad passes away, this is when he starts to challenge the teachings of this religious brethren group, okay? He starts asking questions, which is one thing you don't do. He started having fun, which is one thing you do not do. He started to question the Bible, and that was a big no-no in that religion. And so even his own mother nicknamed him the Beast. And he embraced it. He sure did. He really enjoyed pointing out the inconsistencies in the Bible to people and kind of making them rethink what they're doing. You know, they're like, how can you let this take joy from you? You know, how can you allow them to take joy from you so that you can't have any fun or anything? What is that? Because by this time he's smoking, he's self-pleasing, he is having fun with prostitutes, and to him, this is the way you should live your life. Live it with love and make your own laws, basically. And we do, as you'll see as we go forward, he does start his own religion as well. So like after he's done like terrorizing everybody about, questioning them about the Bible and things like that, he ends up going to Cambridge University. And I didn't tell you in the beginning, his name is actually Edward Alexander Crowley. But he changes it when he's in college to Aleister, which is like a Gaelic version of Alexander, okay? So he changes it because it kind of sounds a little bit more mystical, kind of helps him stand out a little bit more, and keep in mind, when he's in college, he does put on these airs that he is, very important and very clean cut, and he's a really good guy, and everybody should love him. But underneath all that, and this is for the time, he was having relationships with men and women, and at that time, that was against the law, point blank period. And so people looked down on him for this, and he actually had a really, really good friend when he was in college as well. He started a relationship with a guy named Herbert Jerome Palate, and this relationship wouldn't last because Palate was not into witchcraft and all that, and all that other stuff that Aleister was into. And so this is actually one of those times where Aleister is very disappointed that this relationship kind of dissipated, and he's not a happy camper about it, and he reflects that in his books and in his poetry and things of that nature, okay? But he goes to college and he doesn't finish. No, he doesn't finish. He decides to leave because, guess what? He got his inheritance. Because remember, he was born into wealth. So he got a ton of money. And he's like, I'm quitting college. I'm done with this. Okay, cool. Do you, bro? Do you? Well, after college, he ends up getting really sick. Like really, really sick. Like I think almost to the point of death, where he's now starting to think about life and death and contemplate it more. And he really was like focusing on morality and the futility of all human endeavor, basically. So he focused even more on occultism and erotic poetry. He was really contemplating life and death. That's how sick he got, that he was really thinking about, in this life, do I really want to be told what to do my entire life as I'm living and I almost just died? Maybe I don't want that. You know what I mean? Maybe I don't want to be in church for the rest of my life and have to be fake in front of everybody and put on airs and all this other stuff, because that's what he did in college. Outside, he was like this polished man, but he had a reputation for, like I say, having relationships with men and women, which is against kind of code then, and it wasn't a good thing. And he did drugs, he had prostitutes, but he did this because this is how he felt that he needed to live his life. Now that he's got his inheritance in hand, he is going to go around the world, and he also publishes his first book, and it's erotic poems. And he also meets somebody that gets him into a certain organization that kind of, definitely went with his vibe at the time. And it was the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. There was a guy that he met, and Aleister would talk to everybody and anybody about the occult. And so, of course, these people in this order, they were very interested in what he had to say, in his literature, and things like that. Well, he also had an enemy in this group, and his name was, as you guys will know this name, William Butler Yeats, okay? And they kind of butted heads because Aleister was like doing all of these like crazy ceremonial, sex magic type deal. Like they were doing all this. And the Hermetic Order was kind of like, okay, I think he's kind of going over the top, because he did make his way for a while. He made his way, and they liked him. But like I say, he had things on the side that even this order, this Hermetic Order, wouldn't even tolerate. You know what I mean? They were just like, no, I don't think so. And so when this chemist, Julian Baker, introduced him to this group is actually devoted to studying paranormal activity and anything occult. So that's why they were so just kind of head over heels for Aleister because he brought that to the table. So while he is still in this group, he has a senior member of the group come and live in with him and be his personal tutor on the subject on all things that have to do with the Hermetic order. Okay. And so he moves this person into their house, and together they experimented with ceremonial magic and things like that. And of course, that probably had to do with sex magic. And because this was a man, this was something, like I say, they looked down on. Even this Hermetic order, they were not that far ahead yet in the game, you know? And so when they found out about this, the people in the group got even more upset. They were like, oh my gosh, you have this person living with you and y'all are doing all this weird magic that we don't know anything about, you know, because Aleister Crowley he came up with that. He made sex magical because he loved sex, and because he wanted to be magical and he wanted to be different and he wanted to have fun and not have to live, you know, under the guise of the Bible is the be-all, say-all. You can't think for yourself. You can't be free. You can't have fun. You can't dance. You can't sing. Like, I mean, you know, they took everything away from him that, you know, when you take stuff away from people, that really makes them want to go and get it more, you know? And so when you take away, especially a child that's 11 years old and is trying to understand that they have to live their life this absolute certain way, and then his father passes, and now he's thinking, maybe I don't have to do this anymore. Maybe I can just live my life, make my own religion. It's exactly what he did. So not only was Yeats the one that wasn't letting Aleister get to any higher than he already was in the order, also Samuel Mathers was another one who disliked Aleister and his practices and things like that. And so when Aleister found out that he wasn't going to be able to progress up the ladder of this group, he's like, all right, I'm done with y'all. Peace out. And he leaves the group. Now, this is when he starts to travel to Japan, Hong Kong, India. He starts traveling all around the world. He starts doing different kinds of yoga and learns about Buddhism. And I mean, he just really absorbs like a lot of knowledge, which is awesome, right? All the knowledge, all the power. Am I right? He even went to India and studied Raja Yoga, which is not the yoga that we know now of stretching and things like that. It's a lot of meditation and things of that nature. And so he traveled and he learned. And another thing that he did is he was a mountain climber. Yeah. I mean, you know, as witches, we have other stuff that we like to do too. We don't like to be witches all the time. I love to go out in nature and to the creek and stuff like that. And so anyway, he decides he's going to climb the second and third tallest mountains in the United States. Or not the United States, in the world at this time. Okay? So while he's living this, actually training to be in, you know, a mountain climber, he was training in Britain and things like that. But then he decides, I'm going to go and hit up K2 and Kanji, okay, I cannot say this mountain range, I'm so sorry. Kanchenjunga, maybe, I'm sorry, I apologize. Okay, so he decides to do this. Now, he was actually one of the first people to climb the K2 and complete it. So that's kind of memorable, you know, but not a lot of people remember Aleister for this, which is unfortunate. But he was a mountaineer, and he climbed K2, and that was successful. Okay? Now this is where it gets a little weird. This other mountain, the one that I can't say the name of for some reason, him and his group go on the trail, and they're climbing this mountain. And the group is like, no, we're going to take this trail, you know? And Aleister's like, no, I'm not taking that trail, you know? I don't know why he didn't want to take that trail, but he didn't, and so he did not. He took another trail, and group members took the other trail. The group members end up having an avalanche come down on them. And meanwhile, Aleister is walking past the avalanche and hears people inside the snow yelling and screaming, dying. He does nothing. He comes back alone, completely, utterly alone. The only survivor of the group is Aleister Crowley when he climbs the second mountain. So supposedly this man, ignored cries of help from his other group members. Maybe he couldn't get to them. Maybe, the snow could have been so thick that he might not have been able to get to them at all. And so he just kept on going because he wanted to finish this trek or whatnot. And he finished it. And he was the only one. So after he's climbed all these mountains, he decides, I'm going to go to Paris. Yeah. So he goes to Paris, and a man named Gerald Kelly introduces Aleister to his sister Rose during a meeting, and after which they get married. Like super, super quick. Yeah. And the cool thing about Rose is she was kind of into the things that Aleister liked, meditation, the sex magic, and all that kind of stuff, And so they decide to go to Egypt one day because he's a traveling man. They go to Egypt and they're meditating, and all of a sudden Rose gets a message. Maybe it was before they went to Egypt. She gets a message when she's meditating that there is something in Egypt for them, and so they should go there. There is something that is for Aleister there, is what she says. So we need to go to Egypt and find out what this is. And of course, this is where he starts his religion based off of his meditating and communing with a deity. And this deity would go on to help him write his brand new religion or whatnot. So in 1904, like I say, they go to Egypt. They go to Egypt. And this is where he gets messages, okay? And he gets them from, I'm going to try to say this right because I've never heard this deity. Awais, and it's a messenger of Horus, okay? And that is, he ends up writing the Book of Law, okay? And it's a poem which Crowley had claimed been told to him by that deity who was a messenger of Horus, okay? And so he writes everything that this deity supposedly tells him, writes it all down, and calls it the Book of Law. And the most famous part of the teaching is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the laws. Basically saying, if it's good for you, then it's totally fine. Like, you should just not even worry about the law. If you're having fun and and you're doing what you want to do and you're not hurting anybody, then you're fine. You're totally fine, right? That was his way of thinking, of course, which is, that's fine. You can think that way. So he writes this book and he names this new religion Thelema, which is Greek for will, okay? And now between this time, while he's making writing the Book of Law and all these other kind of things and all these famous teachings, this really wasn't a new concept for people. Because 300 years earlier, a man named Francois Rabelais said in his books and basically said this concept to do what thou wilt in the book Gargantua and Pantagruel. I am so horrible with pronouncing words. Oh my gosh. But yes, in this book that was written 300 years before, this idea was already put out there. And so Aleister kind of grabbed it and tweaked it and made it into a religion. Now, Aleister and his wife Rose, during all of this time in Egypt, they have a daughter. Okay? They have a daughter and they name her Lilith. Okay? Which is amazing. I just love that name, okay? And I know why he names her Lilith. If you don't know, I'll make a video on it. Let me know below. But, so he names her Lilith, but the unfortunate thing is that Lilith passes away in 1906 from typhoid. And her mother did not take it well. Her mother, Rose, was already kind of a drunk and was drinking. I mean, Aleister was also doing drugs and things like that to enhance his spiritual consciousness and things like that. But this woman, after her daughter died, was like a hardcore alcoholic. And it wasn't until 1911 they had to institutionalize Rose because the alcohol had rotted her brain so much that she was just losing her mind. So you think with her passing, his daughter's passing, that, you know, this would maybe kind of get Aleister, you know, calm down a little bit, grieve with your wife, you know? No. He finds his own order in 1907, okay, it's a year after his daughter passes. And the order stood for the Latin word silver star. So it was the Order of the Silver Star. And it's like a capital A, 2 dots, and then a dot, a capital A, 2 dots, and then a dot, okay? And so that's what stood for his order. And in 1909, he started spreading his teachings in a periodical called the Equinox. Oh, yeah. This man was writing all the time. There's a lot of books that we've heard, and there's a lot of books that we hadn't heard of. Let me tell you, he wrote a lot. And so while all this was happening, this man was continuing on with his religion, and his wife was not taking the death of their daughter very well at all. And, you know, he just kind of ignores that. He ends up divorcing her because he's just like, yeah, no, I think he felt like that was tying him down. He would have to stay, take care of her. He wouldn't be able to travel. He wouldn't be able to spread his religion. You know, a little bit narcissistic, but hey, that's Aleister Crowley. Rose did try to stay sober for a while because they had another child. Yes, they did, before she went to the place. They had another daughter whose name was Lola, and she was given sole custody to Rose, of course, when they divorced. And so she had full custody of her daughter, but then in 1911, like I say, she went into an institution. And I don't know what happened to that kid. I know she didn't go live with her dad because her dad goes on to have more kids. He doesn't get married. He just has children with all the prostitutes that he hires and things like that. So we never know what happened to Lola. I was very curious what happened to her. Like, because she had to have been like 2 or 3 years old when her mom went to the institution, and Aleister's probably in another country somewhere, you know? I don't know, it's just kind of mind-boggling. So like I say, after the divorce, he just went from city to city talking all about his awesome religion and buying prostitutes, and one bore him a son, actually, and he named him Aleister Autoric. And he continued with his manuscripts on the occult. He's like, oh, I had a kid? Okay, cool. Here's his name and peace. I'm out, you know? He was branded an atheist and a sadist and a Satanist. And he embraced it, okay? But this man was far from being a Satanist, okay? Maybe you're wondering, why did they think this man was a Satanist? Okay, well, for one thing, he did do a lot of work with Baphomet. And a lot of people get Baphomet confused with Satan. Baphomet is not Satan. Get that inside there right now. It is not, okay? But they thought that also the rumors that went around were just absolutely insane for this man. So people, of course, you hear one thing and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as it's spread and spread and spread until there's no truth in it anymore, you know? And so to him, to everybody around him, the Christian equation of the beast of Revelation with Satan, that's what they thought of him was. The fact that he embraced Baphomet, like I said, they always confused with Satan. And he also wrote about summoning and commanding of demons. But this is interesting as all get out. Which he considered an exploration of the self rather than working with literal demons. So he's talking about summoning the demons, the shadow side of himself, and facing those He's not talking about summoning a real demon like it's going to come in the door and he's going to bow down to it. No, he's working on his inner self. He's working on those parts of himself that he's not happy with, and that's what he calls his demons. And I love how he says this, because it does sound crazy to say that I summon my demons and deal with them. But when you say it like that, and you just say the demons I'm talking about are the things that's wrong with me that I'm trying to fix about myself, then you think of it like, that's genius. It's about this time that World War I is starting to gear up over in Europe, and so our man Aleister goes to the United States, where he gets a job writing for a German newspaper called The Fatherland. And when I read that, I was like, wait, what? But it was actually to keep the U.S. neutral during that time. Yeah. But anyway, so after the war, though, this is what's important. After the war, he moves to Sicily, and he purchases a home, and he makes it into a sanctuary for his religion. Okay? And he called it the Abbey of Thelema, or Thelema, however you want to say that. They experimented with drugs and sex and all these crazy sex rituals and, all this other stuff. And during this time, when he was living at the sanctuary, he wrote The Diary of a Drug Fiend in 1922. And it's based on his personal experiences with all the drugs that he's done and the enlightenment he's trying to accomplish with these drugs and things like that. So he writes a book about it. So he's written this book, and he is The Diary of a Drug Fiend. He's written this book, and he is very proud of it, very much so, and because it was based on his very personal experiences. And unfortunately, though, in 1923, the death of one of his followers pisses off a lot of people. Like, a lot of people. So many people, he gets kicked out of Italy. So let me tell you what happened. In 1923, the death of one of his followers during a sacrilegious ritual, of course, he ends up dying. Now, first they say that he died drinking bad water. But this man's wife said, no, he died because he drank cat's blood during this sacrilegious ritual that they were doing. And so when people found out about him drinking cat's blood, and let's talk about that for a second. They could have chose any other blood. But cats, they get diseases that humans get, like AIDS. Yeah, they do. A lot of people don't believe that, but look it up. It's true. And I wouldn't imagine being able to do that. No. This poor guy dies, and so the leader of Italy at that time, they were like, you got to go. You have to leave Italy, and you may never return type deal. Okay. Then people started going around saying that he claimed to have sacrificed 150 children a year. Okay. Most people would stop at that sentence and be like, ew, what's wrong with him? Okay. This is his way of thinking. His way of thinking is he's referring to every ejaculation that did not make a baby. That's how he sacrifices babies. Is that when he does sex magic and a baby is not produced, then that, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's funny to me, I'm sorry. But basically he's saying that whenever he didn't make a child, he was sacrificing a child with his semen. Okay. So the British press deemed him the most wickedest man in the world, okay, and kicked him out of Italy. It was like, yeah, you cannot come back. He was expelled from Italy in 1923. Even after all this, he still was not done. He was still going to write, and he still needed an assistant. And he found an assistant that would help him in his teachings, and he also married her. She was a Nicaraguan woman, And he married her so that he could take her to England or to Britain so she could join him there. Her name was Maria Teresa Sanchez, and she would help him write his books. And she absolutely loved it. You know what I mean? I can't talk when I'm doing that. So, of course, by this time, he has used up all of his inheritance. The man is broke. He has no more money. None. And he goes back to England, where he publishes his very last book, the Book of Thoth. And this book is about tarot cards. He created a deck. And it's the Thoth deck. And he did the interpretations and all that fun stuff on it. And that was the very last book that he wrote. Okay? It was pretty awesome. You should definitely check that one out. That's one that I know a lot of you guys have heard of. So by 1935, this man has no money. He has nothing. And in 1947, he dies in obscurity, poor as all get out, in a boarding room in England. Okay. And after his death, of course, before his death, he wasn't a very cool person. You know, they didn't like him when he was alive. But after his death, and then we have the whole free spirit movement happening in the 70s and 60s, right? And so we have people like the Beatles. Wow, the Beatles put Aleister on the cover of the Sgt. Pepper album, the Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club album. And Jimmy Page, who's the guitarist for Led Zeppelin, if you didn't know, bought one of Crowley's houses in Loch Ness, Scotland. So this man kind of had houses almost in every country. I mean, he spent his money. He did. Black Sabbath, wrote Mr. Crowley. Yeah. Good song right there. Very good song. Yeah. And so why was he so controversial? That's what a lot of people want to know. Why was he so controversial? Well, him being a bisexual did not help during that time, obviously. It did not help. People were very, that was new to them. Maybe. I don't know. But they didn't like it. It is what it is. Rumor was that he was a Satanist and a child murderer, which, as we know, he is not a Satanist. He believes in, he talks to Baphomet, who's not Satan, okay? And he's not a child murderer. He's just talking about every time he got off and didn't produce a child. Which is a weird way of thinking of it, but it's also a way to think of it to freak people out, but then it's like, oh, that kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? Okay, and the dude is freaking awesome. He founded a religion organization opposite of Christianity. Of course, everybody's going to hate him for that. If you're not a Christian, you're hated. You know what I mean? If you're not part of some kind of thing, you're hated. And it's awful. Of course, the death of one of his followers from drinking the cat blood, supposedly, even though it could have been bad water he drank from a creek. I mean, people died from, dysentery and, not being clean and things like that back then. So we don't know if it was the cat's blood or it could have been bad water, like they were saying, They would cut themselves, his followers would cut themselves with razors. People did not like that because that looks like a blood sacrifice, I guess you could say. And also, there's some people that will say that he was a British spy, okay? There's not a lot of claims to back that up because I read a lot about this, but I had to put that in there. He said, though, quote unquote, he did not hate God or Christ, but merely the God and Christ of people whom I hated. I feel that on a lot of levels because I live in the Bible Belt, and there's churches. It's like church, bar, church, ABC store, church. That's how it is down here. And the way he put it is the way I think about God now. I believe in God 100%. I don't believe in the misogynist God that churches have created by putting Starbucks inside of their churches, huge television screens instead of hymnals, and people judging everybody for what they're wearing or what they're not wearing or how their hair looks or whatever. It's just not a good situation. And so he it's not that he didn't believe in God. Like I said, he just didn't believe in the God that people were creating. And they're still doing it today. When Aleister Crowley died, they called his funeral a black mass. That's how much he was disliked when he passed away. But then, like I say, in the 60s, when the love, drugs, rock and roll, sex, all that comes together, people found his literature and they really took it in because he did write a lot of books. You should check it out. It's like 40 books. Either it's poems or stories or it's his religion. He did so many different things. He really opened up doors for a lot of people later on in life that did not want to stick with the I have to do this and I have to be this and I have to act like this and I have to be fake, or they just wanted to live their life and have fun. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not hurting anybody, obviously. Aleister never hurt anybody. The guy that died, we don't know if he forced him to drink that or what. But because the guy was in his sanctuary and it was on his watch, they were like, yeah, no, this is your fault, bro. You got to get out. And the fact that he calls on demons and says that these demons, he's calling them from inside of him. And they're not physical beings, they're feelings. That makes so much sense to me. And to say he sacrificed like over 150 children a year, when that just comes from empty ejaculation, any ejaculation he had, which he had a lot because he was using prostitutes all the time. If it didn't produce a baby, then that means he sacrificed a child. It's a weird way of thinking about it, but at the same time, I kind of want to pick his brain, like hardcore. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's a lot of information, I know, but Aleister Crowley definitely shaped the way witches were in the 60s and 70s and paved the way for future witches to stand up and not have to go to church and not have to sing hymns and sit in the pews and all that other fun stuff. We can go out in nature and commune that way. Just saying. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I love you. Stay awesome.